right, everybody. We're gonna get started in 10 seconds or so here. Hi. All right, less than 10 seconds. Thank you all for quieting down. Good afternoon, and welcome to our panel on how to differentiate your concept and compete with larger brands. I'm Rob Huntington, CEO of Metric Collective, and will be the moderator for us today. The question is particularly interesting to us at Metric, as a key question we think about when we invest in brands is what makes it special? Like, how is the story of the brand's uniqueness best told to consumers, to prospective franchisees, and to the internal team? We own Franchise Help and know that differentiated brands resonate with consumers and franchisees. We've invested in a walk-in wellness vet clinic called PetWell Clinic that's differentiated because it has tons of white space and a really unique approach. Then we just recently partnered with a cookie concept, which is about as undifferentiated as it can get because, you know, it's cookies, but we think the process will make it differentiated. I'm excited to learn today from our panelists about differentiation and how everyone thinks about it. We're going to approach it from 3 different angles. From first the consumer angle, second the Fran Dev angle, and then third internal teams. I'll start by reading the question out loud that we're specifically tasked with tackling. So the question is, every large market is crowded and competition is fierce for space, franchisees, and labor. Your customer experiences and engagements must define and exemplify your brand accurately, and most importantly, differentiate what separates your brand from the rest, especially in a crowded industry. This panel of experts will discuss their strategies and approaches toward industry supremacy. In our panelists, we've got Bob Crawford, CEO of Central Bark, got Shant Assarian, president of Deka, Lash, Brian Gross, CEO of Bach, and then Jeff Panella, CEO of Green Home Solutions. So we're going to start going through first the consumer angle. And we're going to start with Bob at Central Bark. He has a really unique kind of vertical differentiation where they offer the full suite of services for dogs. And I'll hand it to you, Bob, to share how you think about differentiation.
Testing. Thank you. Thank you, Rob. So Central Bark is a 35-unit chain in 12 states. We have about 23 that are sold but not open. We offer dog daycare, overnight boarding, grooming, and training. And obviously there's, in all of our categories, or many of our categories, there's a lot of competition. So when we think of, in a lot of it's mom and pops, there's some larger branded national chains, regional chains. So how we think about our brand from the consumer point is critical. How do you differentiate yourself is in some ways the core question for any successful brand. And it goes down to 3 questions, right? How are we different, better, and special? And I think each of us has, with our own branded companies, has something to offer in each of that. So how do we become different, better, and special? Okay, sure, that's a easy thing to say, but you really have to make sure you look at your the category, and if you're a small emerging brand and there's larger companies out there, that's great. The category leader will create awareness of the category. That's perfect. That's great. And then what you can do as an emerging brand is differentiate yourself on those 3 areas. What makes you different, better, and special? And that takes a lot of, obviously, work, and it takes a tremendous amount of focus, because it's one thing to say I'm different, better, special, but how do you deliver the consumer experience day in, day out? And how do you welcome someone from an immediate search inquiry to, if you have a brick and mortar concept, how do you welcome that person in a uniquely relevant way? How do you follow up with that person on a lead? How do you bill that person? How do you invoice? All those opportunity for customer touch points are there for each of us to become different, better, and special. And I do want to just throw out a famous musician. It's not Bach, but it would be Jerry Garcia. He said, "I don't want to be the best at what we do. I just want to be the only person to do what we do." And that's a guiding principle for us. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for kicking that off. I've been excited about him referencing Jerry Garcia since he mentioned that earlier on our prep call. Shant, you want to talk about your days at Mathnasium and how you hyper-focused on math instruction and took the company from 170-ish units to 1,100 and a massive exit to Rourke?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. So I'm with Deka Lash. I've been with Deka Lash for a year, and I've been with Mathnasium. I was with Mathnasium for over a decade, leading the growth of that brand from what you just said, under 200 to over 1,100 locations. And with both brands, we are specializing on a particular service. I'll speak to a little bit more on the Mathnasium side. When I started in 2010, under 200 locations, the gorilla in the room, if you will, was Kumon with 1,500 locations, established decades in the space before Mathnasium even started. So you've got this huge brand. Then you had Sylvan Learning Centers, also I think about 900 units at the time, and they were spending tons of money on advertising. I would remember as a kid seeing their advertisements on television. And Mathnasium, when I started, under 200 locations, grand total revenue to us of $5 million, less than $5 million. And we had an ad fund back then. It must have been under $1 million, a couple $100,000. So we don't have the number of units. We don't have the marketing budget. And so how did we succeed? We ended up becoming, when I left, over 1,100 locations, the second largest in the US and one of the largest in the world. But how do you get there when you have limited resources to begin with? And so the things I think about in reflecting in the past, what made us successful was you actually have to be better at something. It's not simply being different. You actually have to be better. So at Mathnasium, we were really, really good at teaching math, specifically teaching math. The second piece is the thing you're better at, the thing you're really good at, there has to be sufficient demand for. So it's not good enough to be good at something. People actually have to want the thing that you're really good at. And in our case, 40% of the spend in supplemental education was on math, specifically math. So we were really good at it, and there's a lot of demand for it. The third piece is really understanding who you are, what you're good at, and who your customer is. Because you actually have to target and advertise the right message to the right customer. So we were careful to make sure that we're advertising that we are good at teaching math and identifying the right target audience and spending the limited dollars that we had attracting that right audience. So three critical things when you're going up against these large brands. How do you go up against them? It's not simply being different. You have to focus on what you're better at. You have to be better at something that is demanded. And then you have to make sure that the advertising lines up with the thing you're really good at that is demanded to the people that want it. You got to make sure that those dollars are being spent on building the awareness to those people that want that thing you're really good at.
Awesome. Thank you. That flows naturally into Brian and your time at Bach and highlighting specifically the methodology. As a guy with a 5-year-old and 7-year-old about to kick them into music classes, I'm particularly curious about what makes Bach awesome.
Sure, thanks. Bach is a national chain of music schools. We have about 60 right now across the country open. Most people have heard of School of Rock. They're the largest branded player in our space. But truthfully, the biggest competitor is the person that'll come to your home and give you private music lessons either at your location or maybe you go to their house instead. And when you think about that as if that's really your competitor, and the key is understanding who is really your competitor. It might not be a brand per se, but it could be something more fragmented like that. And what is really driving consumption. So what in our case, what does really mom really, really want? So when you think about what does mom really want? Well, to be part of a well-rounded education, mom thinks music education is part of that. Currently, public schools are moving away from music education, so now she's got to find an alternative source. The afternoon for a mom is crazy, right? They're running in 70,000 different directions, trying to get different kids to different places while working or not working, doing all these other things. So convenience is a big factor. And then they want to know that they're getting value for what they're buying, so the educational component of it. So for us, it starts with location. We locate in Class A retail, co-anchored by grocery stores. Why? Mom goes to the grocery store 2.2 times per week, so she can drop the kids off, go to the grocery store, come back and get them. Then, how do we engage the kids? Fortunately, our founder really believed in the premise that making it fun was as important as the educational content. If kids were having fun, they would practice. If they practiced, they got better. If they got better, mom would see the value in it. So for us, that translates in a number of ways. One is we let them study whatever music they want. If they want to study rap, they study rap. You can learn a quarter note just as easily through Snoop Dogg as you can through Bach. We put them into groups quickly, whether that's a jazz ensemble, a strings quartet, or a rock band. Playing with other kids makes it social. And when it's social, they have a lot more fun. Then we put them out in public performing. So they'll go and perform at small venues like coffee shops up to marquee venues in various communities. And lastly, every school has a professional recording studio, so they learn original songwriting and record, and now feel like they are professional musicians getting the full musical experience. So when you combine all of that, it becomes something that a fragmented music instructor that's coming to your house, you're going to their house, just can't compete with.
That's great. Transitioning from that to Green Home Solutions, Jeff, you got a lot of tailwinds there with the pandemic and Canada burning and smoke, and you can add a lot of value to that. So how do you guys think about, in a niche market, differentiating your concept?
Yes, thank you very much. First of all, I'm a note on the phone guy, so I'm not texting while everybody's talking here. I apologize if it seemed that way. But differentiation, I think, starts immediately, right? So we're at an emerging brand convention here, and I think you have to immediately start thinking how you're going to separate yourself from the competition. And I've learned through many years of business that when I focus or get obsessed with the competition, that's actually the wrong way to go. For us, it's beating ourselves every day, every month, every year, beating out what we did last year for services. What are we using to help us understand what the consumer is looking for, what potential prospects are looking for. And for us, we did a consumer study, a formal consumer study for the first time ever. And even the colors on our website were chosen by our customers. The language on our website was chosen by our customers. So we're doing everything we can to be in touch with our customers. I like to say, be better, be different, or be best. If you can't be one of those, be the other. For us, we want to be the best. We started out, interestingly enough, as a mosquito company, and in 2015 turned it into a mold company. And we've evolved and turned it into an indoor air quality company. And I believe that there's an international need for indoor air services that are not being serviced by other quote-unquote competitors. And to your point, the natural world does things, rain, hurricanes, fires, all that stuff. And although we're sort of the people that come in after those events and after, the big guys like Pure Clean and stuff, after they go in and take care of that, we're the ones that come in after. That's when people feel the impact of what just happened in their home, in their offices. And so we specialize in indoor air quality. And I can't say that we focus on one thing. So we do, air filtration, and we do duct cleaning, and we do testing. Testing is huge for us. And we do dehumidifiers and air filtration, I think I already said. But all of these things are great, but guess what? Next year, I'm going to need to add in other things, right, to be relevant. So the key word there is, evolving. And we've evolved. So that's, hopefully I hit that for you.
Yeah, super helpful. So I think that we all wrestle with, as franchisors and franchisees, is differentiating when you've got someone who is super close to your concept. Like, for example, Huntington Learning Center and Mathnasium. I think, Bob, you have an interesting story to tell on that. Bob has a serious marketing background pre-franchising and was with Coke and differentiating against Pepsi. And I feel like that's kind of analogous to tutoring companies or Bach to Rock for a School of Rock. How did you guys think about differentiating at Coke and Pepsi versus Pepsi?
Yeah, so I spent 10 years in Atlanta at the Coca-Cola Company in marketing, and they're just kind of two ideas here. First is we used to say that if you can't when you're competing against someone else, if you can't fix anything, if you can't fix your problem, feature it, right? So it's like a different way of thinking. But more importantly is we always talked about when we positioned our brands against other alternatives, and there was a number of out there, and Coca-Cola didn't have all the answers, by the way, but like we were 4 years late on a bottle of water. Like, how do you do that? But that's a separate question. But the question when you're branding is and positioning is, what are you going to sacrifice so you can own something else? And it has to be a meaningful sacrifice. So there's a couple QSR chains that just, one of them is In-N-Out Burger. They only do burgers. Can you imagine just what's the biggest growth area in QSR? Chicken, right? They are like $9 million of AUV. They only do one thing, burgers. And milkshakes and fries and et cetera, beverages. But the point is that they've sacrificed something so they can own something else. And I think the other concept in the QSR that does this really well is Chick-fil-A, right? They're sacrificing 14% of their sales a day of the week, Sunday, right? They're saying take 14% off, 1/7. Or how about this? The number one protein consumed is some type of beef product, right? So they say, hey, I don't want to even do burgers. They want to own something, and so they give up something else. We talk about that internally a lot when we try to differentiate ourselves in the marketplace. So what are you going to sacrifice so you can own something else?
That's great. I think a thing on many people's mind here is executing FranDev really well. And I think your comment, Brian, on just not focusing on the competition and excelling is a good way to handle that. How do you and the rest of the panel think about differentiating when you're going head-to-head and you have a candidate who's like, why should I pick your thing versus, I guess in your case, School of Rock or like a mom and pop? So how do you guys think about differentiation in the FranDev process?
In FranDev or hiring?
In FranDev.
Okay. Truthfully, we only do have one competitor in FranDev, which makes it a little bit easier. It's either School of Rock or us. And when earlier it was talked about, it's not a bad thing to have a major player in your industry. We chose not to make a lot of investment in FranDev marketing because School of Rock was. So any sophisticated buyer, and quite frankly, I don't want one who isn't, when they found School of Rock, should have found us, right? I mean, we're the only other player out there. So we were getting leads essentially off of their, off the tail of their advertising budget. So we let that play out, for the first handful of years and let that feed our funnel. So look for advantages and things like that. And then once you have them, then it's really back to the differentiation, right? How are we different from them? School of Rock by name is a rock and roll school. You can't get too far away from that because that's your brand name. We are more of a birth to death brand where we have mommy and me programming up through adults, all genres, all instruments. We have a DJ school. We offer parties, camps. So from a revenue stream, we're much broader. They're more niche. So when you kind of look at unit economics, we have a greater average revenue per unit. So when it comes down to what somebody's looking for, but we had specific and unique differences that we could leverage and use their funding to help us reach our audience.
Cool. The question for you, Shant, on that is, with Deka Lash, how do you guys think about the hyper specialization on lashes versus like Bob or Brian who go broad and offer the whole suite? Like you guys could theoretically do all of beauty and you're instead focused hyperly on lashes. So how do you guys think about that?
So when you're specializing in something, and these are different decisions for different reasons. Do you diversify and offer multiple services and try and serve the customer that wants like a one-stop shop? Or do you serve a specific need? With eyelash extensions, it's a growing market. It's a growing segment of the beauty industry. And when we are focusing on eyelash extensions, we can build the business around that specific service. And not to say that you can only offer that service, that there wouldn't be other complementary services. And the biggest brands out there, we all offer complementary services. It's not only eyelash extensions, but they are complementary to the eyelash extension service. There are certain things that just wouldn't be appropriate to match up. But when you're specializing on a particular service, it becomes easier to build the business model around that. So whether it's eyelash extensions or whether it's education, when we're able to teach math and only math, then we're able to build the location itself, the layout of the location, the design of the location, everything to complement and work towards teaching math specifically. Similarly with eyelash extensions, you make sure that you can provide the consumer the best possible experience specific to applying the eyelash extensions. So there are different arguments to make as to diversifying versus specializing. I think you need to assess what the market demand is. In, again, the eyelash extension industry, it's a growing industry, plenty of space. It's not so much about who gets the bigger slice of the pie. It's about, hey, we have a pie here that is a growing pie. And in a sense, the different brands in this industry right now can be working to expand the pie for the benefit of all the brands that are in the industry. So that's how I think about it.
Cool. Related to that, Jeff, your story seems a lot like that show Silicon Valley, where they pivoted like 18 times over the course of getting to where they got. Are you guys thinking of pivoting more and like going deeper and doing maybe like a more vertical play like some of these other guys are, like Bach or Bob with dogs? Or are you guys going to be hyper focused on where you are today?
Yeah, great. Hello? Hello? Okay, got it. Yes. So to part of that innovating and evolving is that you're always looking for new revenue streams to bring to your franchisees, new verticals, new equipment, new products, anything you can do that helps a franchisee, build their business is helping you build your business. So the flat out answer to that is absolutely. We're constantly trying. Anything we can do, we're constantly looking for building the system through franchisee gross sales. And ultimately, when you talk about FranDev and validating, if you have that in mind from the get-go, you will validate. And I can tell you that my whole existence is about making sure that we validate, and that's taking care of your current franchisees. And if your current franchisees can make money, you're taking care of them, they have multiple revenue streams, even in the tough times, they can grab onto other revenue streams. And you have a culture of taking care of your franchisees. They will validate. They will help you sell franchises. And as you know, franchisees get very jealous of new franchisees, right? It's like, hey, you're not taking care of me. You're just focused on new franchisees. And that's a mistake that I learned long ago. And we really, really focus in on franchisee satisfaction. So.
Nice. How do you measure those?
So I think the key measurement, whether your franchisees are happy, is whether you're selling franchisees or selling franchises. And but we do use FBR every single year. Somebody said they do. I think it was somebody earlier said they do it twice a year, which might be an interesting thing. But we take that feedback very, very seriously. We do bring it to our franchisees. We send it out to our franchisees. I talk about it in public forums. I'll send out messages saying, hey, this is what you guys wanted. You wanted more training. For example, I'll give you one or two. They wanted more training. They wanted more individual attention. We're a very science-based company, by the way. It's another differentiator for us. We're not just focused on the consumer. Our franchisees learn about indoor air quality and things like, a mold spore, okay? Really interesting stuff. But they know all about a mold spore. Having said that, because they're experts, it helps them to, work with customers. They feel armed to do battle every day. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I too am a huge fan of FBR. Are others fans of FBR? It's awesome. If you're not, you should totally check it out. Do any of you guys use Franchise Business Review? How do you guys use it along the lines of differentiation? I know one of the other questions we talked about preparing for this was how do you get your teams internally to message differentiation to your franchisees at the field ops level? So for whomever wants to take that one, how do you guys do that?
There we go. So we do an annual franchise business review, franchise satisfaction index. So we spend a lot of time when we get those results back, right? Benchmarking against us previously, as well as the relevant, you can slice and dice the data in so many ways. So you can look at your peer group, et cetera. We probably had 2 or 3 different in-depth meetings as a team to go over that, because we think that is the secret of you. It is expensive, but it gives you incredible insight. So we have huge priorities around communication, and just the natural things come up, like what are you doing really well, right? The way we talk about values, the way we involve franchisees, the way we talk about success, celebrate accomplishments. Those things we want to continue, and then there's always opportunities to improve, right? Technology is one, communication can always be better. So it just helps you, and the verbatims are also really important. Usually that's when you get the qualitative, and then you can find things out that you may have a hunch about, or you kind of want to ignore maybe, or wish weren't so. Guess what? They're right there for you. It's up to you. How do you deal with them?
Shant, curious to hear, I know we were talking before the panel about you hitting up 300 miles over the past couple of days, coming in from LA and visiting all of your units. As you're visiting units and breaking bread with your franchisees, how do you communicate differentiation and the value of the brand? Like recognizing you're talking about P&Ls and a whole bunch of other stuff in those meetings, but how do you underscore that when you're sitting across the table from a franchisee?
So I just want to totally echo everything you just said about Franchise Business Review. Awesome tool. It really forces you to pay attention to, you need to be open and willing to embrace what franchisees are communicating to you and looking for the opportunities to improve, because when they do better, you do better. And Franchise Business Review, whether it's comparing benchmarking against the other franchisors that they benchmark against, or they trend your surveys year over year if you do it repeatedly, and seeing how you're trending. So really amazing tool, highly, highly recommend it. Yeah, I did spend quite a bit of time driving yesterday. And it's super important, and the effort is important to make, because when you're going out of your way to visit with a franchisee, you're showing to them that you care, especially if it's difficult. And for me, 300 miles was a lot yesterday, and they knew that I was staying here in Philly, that I made the efforts to go out and visit them. And what they took out of that, was I care. And they want to know that when the franchisor has taken a significant franchise fee, when we sold them on, you're going to make a return on investment. I know that's a very sensitive conversation in the development process, but ultimately, what is a franchisee buying? They're buying a return on investment combined with hopefully something they enjoy doing while having a return on investment. So they spent a ton of money building out the location, if you're a location-based, whatever that startup investment is, and they want to know that the franchisor cares. It wasn't simply about getting them to sign the franchise agreement. And visiting them at their location. I go, whether it was Mathnasium or Deka Lash, all these places look the same. And they're supposed to, right? So it's not like I'm going to these locations and seeing something very different. It's really more about that FaceTime with them, showing them that respect. In terms of communicating the differentiation, they're already in the brand, right? So they've already bought into the brand. And those conversations end up being more about execution. What are their pain points? What are the challenges? I'll tell you, with one franchisee, I had dinner with them last night. Dinner was impromptu, and me getting together with them was last minute, but we made it happen. And I really wanted to do that visit because our field support staff had said, they're having some trust issues with us, and a visit by you would go a long way. And I'm optimistic that I reset that relationship last night, because I got a chance to go there. They knew that I made a big effort to get to them. And then I said, hey, do you guys have time for dinner? Let's go have dinner. And so I spent hours with them last night, and they valued that. And I believe they now have again, I'm hoping that we have a reset relationship. And that's super important, to have a good relationship, because if you don't have a good relationship, if they don't trust you, they're not going to take your guidance. They're not going to follow your advice. So the relationship is important, and when you can reemphasize and demonstrate all the things that you quote unquote, sold them on in the development process, that you care. This is how we support you. This is, the effect you're having on people's lives. In our case, we're changing lives one lash at a time. So it's reconnecting with the deeper purpose of, we're here to make money, all of us collectively, but we're here to make money doing something that is contributing to the betterment of someone's life and reminding them that that's what they bought into. And again, re-emphasizing, demonstrating, we're here to support you. We have your back. We know you have challenges. So that face time is super important. And like you said, it's an opportunity to remind them of why they bought into the brand they bought into to begin with.
For sure. It's like that Zig Ziglar quote, people don't care what you know until they know that you care. Like going around 300 miles, well, that lands. Brian, I'm super curious about the best comment that you made. Like, I think that's an elegant one in its simplicity. And I think it can come across as cheesy if, like, you're pitching a family and like, we're the best, and like chest pounding. So how do you thread that line by like communicating you're the best, but not doing it in a way that comes across with arrogance?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's execution, right? A third of all of our students come from referrals, which isn't uncommon. A lot of moms or parents, when they want to do something new with one of their children, they ask their friends, right? Hey, I'm thinking about getting John music lessons. What do you guys do? So for us, it really comes down to execution. If you give them the experience that they are looking for, then you're the best to them. It doesn't necessarily mean you're the best, period, but you're the best to them in that point in time. And to that extent, we really live the Net Promoter Score. So we use group called Listen 360. They do our net promoter scoring for us. So every new customer, their first month and then every 3 months thereafter, get surveyed, and we kind of live and breathe through that. And we have a whole program where if somebody drops 2 points, what should we do? If somebody gives you a negative review, what should you do? If you're getting positive reviews, we have sort of a quarterly handwritten note program where we take our top reviews and our top earning families and send them a handwritten note thanking them for what they do and for giving us their children and trusting us with it. We have one family, as crazy as it sounds, that spent over $100,000 with us, with their kids, doing music lessons. They deserve a handwritten note once a quarter saying, hey, thank you. We're really glad to have your children with us. So I think if you can execute on what you're good at, you are the best to that parent because they're getting the best experience that they're looking for.
Totally. I mean, that's kind of the value prop of franchising, right? Like, you control for a model that is good, ideally with strong unit economics, but then it comes down to the execution of the local franchisee, who hopefully with skin in the game will execute really well and hard and sometimes doesn't. Jeff, given your franchise development background, how do you think of, I hope I'm getting this right from my LinkedIn reading last night, how do you think about differentiation when you've got someone who is in your funnel, early discussions, they're psyched about your concept, but they're looking at all sorts of other stuff? Like, how do you winnow that how do you get their attention to be winnowed down onto you?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it starts from the conversation day one. So, the thing about the franchise sale is that it's not transactional, it's relationship. And from an early stage, treating that prospect like you would treat a family member is, so important. And I think that for me, it's kind of a little broader than just kind of a bullet point list, although I have a bullet point list. But it really is about culture, because a prospect can feel your culture like the second they start talking to you. And so for me, we have core values, and everything that we do is driven by our core values: mutual respect, transparency, teamwork, and integrity. And in that order. So, mutual respect comes across right away. And what franchisees sometimes don't expect is transparency. And when you're transparent and you have mutual respect with someone right away, you're off to a good relationship. So for me, there's not a lot of transactional stuff there. It's more about the relationship right up front. And you can differentiate yourself. Like, make no mistake, all of us are fighting for the lead, right? but we're fighting every single brand in here. I'm not fighting people in my category. I'm fighting all of you for a lead, right? So we need to differentiate ourselves by being somebody they would want to go to dinner with, or to buy a house with, or like a family member. And so we focus very hard on that. Hopefully that answers that. But.
It's awesome. You got it?
Uh-oh, I might be dead. Okay. No, I was just thinking, when in our sales process, at the point I enter, I have this line, and when you were talking, it made me think of it. I sit there and I tell them, look, if you decide to follow through with this and buy one of our schools, you're really getting married 3 times. Whoever your partner was in life, you're marrying us as a franchisor, and you're marrying your landlord, because we do 10-year leases. And I said, if you can't grow comfortable with those relationships, like, you should look at me as if I'm a spouse, because I'm going to be across from you for at least 10 years. As same with your landlord. And to your point, it is very relationship driven, because you really can't get divorced very easily.
No, indeed.
Can I build on that a little bit?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Something I didn't mention is, so we don't do a formal discovery day. And I've done discovery days in the past, in my history. But we do a thing called Meet the Leaders. And I can tell you, when this happens, unless we don't want them for some reason, something comes up, they're going to sign. So if they get to this point, and we've never had that where they don't, except for when we found that it wasn't a match. But our leadership team, the entire leadership team, will devote hours if we need to. If it's going to go on, we block off the entire day, and we have a call with the prospect. And that prospect can ask us any single question they want to ask us about anything. It can be personal, it can be the business, and we're going to take them through our history. We're going to take them through, kind of like without showing them the culture. We're going to take them through our culture, each individually, and they really appreciate that personal attention. And it's not a transactional, like, discovery day type thing, or we're trying to sell them. We're trying to have a relationship with them. So.
Awesome. Any more thoughts on FranDev before we open it up to Q&A?
Just one other, I'm a competitive person, so when we get a prospect to the end of the funnel, like, I want to close, but you have to also be very conscious, and I said this to one of our prospective franchisees. He was saying, it's a competitive category, it's a lot of money, and I said, if it's not right for you, then that's okay. It has to be right for you, it has to be right for us, and that's okay. And I remember right after I said that, I had a chance to talk to our friend Dev leader. I was like, I think I might have just lost the sale. And but sure enough, and I meant it, because the worst is when you get involved in 3 marriages that that is worse. And it ended up being really positive, and he came back, and we signed him up or he signed the franchise agreement, and so anyway, it's just something that I really learned a ton about, and want to urge you to think like that too.
Yeah, and if I can just comment as well, when you're going through a franchise development process and you get a franchisee who signs that franchise agreement, your responsibilities just begin. Things don't end there. It actually just begins there. You need to make sure, for validation purposes, but also because it's the right thing, that you follow through and you fulfill and actually go above and beyond on those commitments, those promises that you made during the development process. Setting expectations is everything. If you've got a franchisee who's expecting something different than what you could actually deliver, you're going to have a problem immediately. I know for young franchisors, that check looks really, really good, but I promise you, it'll turn out more expensive for you trying to unwind someone that shouldn't have been in to begin with than to not let them in at all to start with. And I know that's really, really difficult when you're having to meet payroll and you really need that check to come in. So I've been in your shoes. I know the common language here is, make sure you're accepting the right franchisees. And we were talking about it earlier. Who are the right? How do you know? How can you definitively know? And sometimes you really can't. And as long as there isn't some major flag, you're going to go and take that check. And it's going to happen. You're absolutely going to get the wrong franchisees in, and that never really stops, to be honest, because you're not perfect and you're not always going to get it right. But if you know someone's wrong, just don't bother. Just don't. You're just creating a bigger mess, and at least a bad validation. Because again, they have a different expectation. You don't deliver on that expectation, they're going to give bad validation and compromise your other candidates who are looking to become franchisees.
Totally. That was a fun conversation earlier. The other part of that conversation was this idea that it's really hard to tell who's going to be good. Like I was leading franchise sales and operations, so knew that to whomever I sold, I'd have to help on the other end. And there was this guy who I was like, this guy's like super marginal, but we are way short of our target, so like, award. And then he blew it out. It was awesome. And I didn't see it coming at all. There have been plenty of dogs, though, as well. All right. Q&A. Who has any questions for our panelists about differentiation across any of those pieces, like for consumer, for internal teams, or for FranDev? Yeah.
So, do you focus more on differentiating yourself to prospective franchisees or to consumers, or are those one and the same?
Whomever wants to take it.
I can jump in just real quick.
Oh, can I repeat the question? Yeah. Do you focus? Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
So, are you more focused on differentiating yourself in the eyes of prospective franchisees, or to the consumers and the franchisees you're going to be working with, or is that the same?
Right. So for me, I've had to in my career come up with this conclusion that I have to be very clear about what each of us does. Right. So what the franchisor does is sell franchises. So we have to differentiate ourselves to that prospect. And like they say in franchising, if you're not growing, you're dying. And we can't allow that, right? Because we have thousands of lives that are counting on us to be successful. On the other side, though, we have a responsibility to create an excellent system so that franchisees can thrive. But we can't be really, for me, we can't be mistaken on the fact that we don't go in and remediate homes for mold. That's not what we do. That's what the franchisee does. And the way that, and by the way, we are all so lucky to be in franchising because we do differentiate ourselves already from big corporations that have employees because people put everything they have on the line and they want to be the best. They want to be different. They want to be the better customer service. And those are the kind of franchisees you want to bring in. So you're differentiating by bringing in the best possible candidate you can that's passionate about those kinds of things. So pass it along.
Yeah, for us, it's a little different because we have some company-owned schools. So we view it as two different activity sets, and we have two different budgets, and we have resources, human capital against each. So we have the group that markets and does FranDev, and then we have the consumer-facing group. The messages are not the same. They overlap, but they're not the same because I'm talking to a mom in a family who's looking for music education versus an entrepreneur who's looking for a business who has a passion for being with kids or music. So I think you have to really separate them. I think it'd be a little lazier to try and combine it into one message, and you would be not your best in both.
They're two different things, right? The person that's the end consumer of the product or service that your brand is offering versus, so that's one thing. The business model is the franchise. So the franchise development function, you are marketing and you're developing, what you're selling is the business model. The end consumer is the one that's buying that ice cream cone. So two totally different sets of customers, totally different sets of value proposition. On the business model, value proposition at the heart is, hey, you're going to get an ROI on this investment that you're going to make. On the consumers buying that ice cream cone, I don't know, I'm not an ice cream guy, but maybe it's like, you're going to feel really good after having this ice cream on this hot summer day. So different value propositions.
We have time for
I think there's a B2C component, there's a B2B component, which is FranDev, and then there's a B2E component, business to employee. How do you be different, better, and special to employees that work for your organization? And three of those combined make your brand different.
For sure. It's a critical leg. Do we have time for one more question? Do you have one more question, Lee? One more question. Yes? Is the franchisee a customer or a partner? It's a doozy for the last question.
I like thinking of them as a customer. I mean, a franchisee is a franchisee. That's just a label, customer, partner. The reason I don't like the partner label is when they go bankrupt, we haven't gone bankrupt, right? We're not sharing at that pain level. Yeah, we're pained that royalty stops until we get someone new in, but it's a whole other scenario. And oftentimes, franchise development is loosely referred to as franchise sales. Well, naturally, if you're selling, quote unquote, selling something, that means you're selling to a customer. But all of a sudden, I see this too often, franchisee signs that agreement, and all of a sudden, they're not a customer, they're a partner. And no, we set certain expectations in the franchise development process to serve them, whether that's through training and support. So I view them, if I have to put a label between partner or customer, I like the customer label, but it's just a label. It's a unique relationship. There's a customer relationship, then there's a vendor relationship I think of with a franchisee. What we're doing is we're handing this precious brand to you, and you have to maximize the potential of the brand in the market that we're awarding rights to you on. So I try to avoid labeling what a franchisee is.
Cool.
Yeah, I would just end with, I think partner gives you a mindset. I don't use it, but it reminds you to be collaborative. At the end of the day, you have final sort of opinion, but to remember to be collaborative. People earlier were talking about having a franchise council and making sure to run things through them and give them the credit. And I think as long as you maintain that mindset, knowing that at the end of the day you are different, that's how we do it. So. Correct. At the end of the day, they are different from you, but trying to keep collaborative and having good relationships and all the things that we talked about is the end goal. But at the end of the day, it's a different relationship.
Awesome. Thank you. Big round of applause for our panelists.